Zach Burley here with a new series on the channel. This one is going to be on GMT's brand new ancestral relation to Twilight Struggle, Imperial struggle. This one is about basically like the second 100 Years' War between France and the United Kingdom or Great Britain. It encompasses basically about 100 years of a history, spans 6 turns and 4 wars. It involves not only fighting physical battles, but also fighting over economic factors and positioning, alliances, and that sort of thing. So I'll go ahead and say before I start that I've already played this game once, and I absolutely love it. It's great. Twilight Struggle, honestly. I mean, if you're honest, and I think almost everyone can agree on this. If you're honest, it's one of the best games ever made. It's not too complex, but it's complex enough. It's the chess version, I would say, of a board game, and it's so lovely themed and crafted and balanced. It's just a great game overall. This game is right up there with it. I don't know. I'm not gonna, say one's better than the other because it's pointless. But I will say, just as far as liking them, that there are things that I like better about Twilight Struggle, but there are definitely things that I like better about this game. I'll go ahead and tell you now. So if you don't want to watch the rest of this whole thing, you'll know. If you're looking whether or not you want to buy this, here's a little bit on it. The one thing that I love about this game is it's just like Imperial Struggle, but it's tuned up a little bit. It's just a little bit more complex, so you'll probably need to play it first before you really do it seriously, because you'll have no idea what you're doing. You'll get to the end and you're like, I realize I did just about everything wrong, because I could already tell you there's a million ways to play this game. But it's just nuanced, and that's lovely. But the best part for me is that each theater, which is the circles, has an award marker, which different amounts of victory points that it's worth at the end of each turn. And that will change. Not a huge amount, but it will change. And then also the amount, or the markets that you're going to be fighting over change every turn. So there'll be 3 markets that are in global demand. And they also have different weights of victory points that they're worth, depending on which, what do they call them, era you're in. So that's great because in Twilight Struggle, it's always, everything's always the same, the victory points are the same, you're always sure of what's going to be, important when. It's just a matter of when that scoring card's going to come out. But with this game, it's, every single time you play, it's different. You could have a really high victory point award marker down in the Caribbean, and then come to find out tobacco and sugar to come up as well. So now it's going to be hyper-focused in this region, which in another game you may never have a really high marker down in the award space, and only these resources come up a couple of times. So it is totally changing, evolving, it's organic, it's beautiful. The advantage tiles I thought were going to be a little finicky. They were going to be like too much and hard to remember and stuff like that, but they're actually really good. They're going to be hard to use your first game because there's just so much, going on, and then you have to factor in that too. But they're awesome. Just really well balanced. The wars are super cool. I didn't pay them enough attention as the British last time I played. The French won a 28 victory point win after final scoring. I just did it solo, and they really went hard in on the markets and everything like that. And the French, they didn't really not ignore them, they just didn't do as much. And the French didn't do a whole lot either, but they just did a little bit more. And then in the first Carnatic War, they ended up losing all of India to the French. They did manage to take it back in the American War of Independence, but for 2 or 3 turns, they were just out of luck. 2 turns, they were just out of luck in India, which was pretty crippling. But overall, this game is just awesome. I love it. So we're going to be going through this. It's a little bit structured differently because it's not really a card game, which is pretty much everything I've done is card driven. I think everything I've done is card driven. I'll have to go back and look, but it's pretty much everything. So this one's a little bit different with these investment tiles. So the structure may be a little bit different. But anyways, I'm sure I'll make some rules errors, but you guys know that and you'll know to correct me. So hope you guys enjoy this series. Let's jump in. So the French, for their first action, are going to take the 4 economic, 2 military. Oh, sorry, they're not going to do that. They're going to take the 4 military, 2 diplomatic action. And in Europe, or in North America, they're going to do their first the economic actions. They're going to do put a flag of market in Niagara, which is 2. And then they're going to flag a market in the Northeast Channel. Now that one's 3, which takes them over their limit of 4, so they're 5. But they increase their debt by 1, which is basically like extra points that you get. Treaty points, like the same thing. They're going to use the debt to be able to do that. So that takes them up to 5, and the debt is great. I mean, the debt is great. The treaty points are great. The ministry cards are great. Man, I just love this game. And the battles that they're going to come out with, squadrons, that's lovely as well. I really love this game. I can't say it enough. So that's their military action with their economic action, excuse me. So now with their economic action, or their diplomatic action, they're going to drop with 2. They have 2. They're going to drop a flag in Spain. It is a green outlined space, which means it is counts towards the Prestige Award. I think that's what it's called in Europe. So all of the green outlined places will count towards an additional scoring that happens in Europe. So those are important spaces alongside all of the alliances, which will give you bonuses in certain wars and that sort of thing. So that will do it for the French on their first action round. Now to the British. So the British are going to do something pretty similar. They are going to take the 4 economic, 2 military investment tile as their first action. And they're going to use it, exclusively in North America. They're going to flag the Cumberland market, which gets them access to the Ohio Forks fort, as well as this kind of southern theater. They're going to use the other 2 points from that economic action to flag George's Bank, which is only a 2, it's not a 3 like the French had to go with. And then the milits, that's done with the economic action. Even though they could keep going, they could increase their debt by a bit. I think they actually will do that. I think they're going to spend 3 on the debt to flag Albany as well, because there's only 2 more major economic actions, and there's no more 4s. So they're going to go ahead and bump their debt up to 3 more, and that sounds like a lot, but they have some cards in their hand that actually make that not so bad. So that'll help get them ahead of the game in the fur markets, because the French are now going to have to battle between Oswego and Hayar. I don't even know how to say that space up there, so I'm not gonna. With the military action, they have 2 points, but the minor actions can only be used for one thing. They can't be split up among multiple things. So the squadron is going to move to the Gulf of Maine. And it's going to go to the Gulf of Maine to protect the market, in the George's Bank market, and give them a route into Halifax. Because a route into Halifax, first of all, protects the northern colonies in case of war, but also gives them a route into Louisbourg if a war breaks out and the French get there first, or they could just straight up take Louisbourg with the hopes of taking Acadia at some point. So those conquest lines are the dotted lines, and they are something to think about when it comes to the wars, because you can conquer territory, and that really stunts a power's ability to have influence in a region. It makes it really difficult, and they're going to spend their whole turn just reestablishing themselves rather than actually fighting over markets or anything like that. So it's huge. So that'll do it for the British. French action round 2. So the French are going to take the first event space. They're going to get a 3 economic, 2 military, and an event. The event they're going to play is Vatican Politics, and they have to, if they want to get the bonus for this event, which there's a British side and a French side, the bonus event's pretty good. They have to have a ministry card that matches this, which they do. The French have some pretty good ministry cards to start off with in the Succession era. And one of my favorites is Court of the Sun King, which is 2 bonuses, and the award for Europe is gained by an extra 1. So this says, shift any Spain or Austria space. It's a tough one because the spaces are important for the wars. They've already got 1 in Spain. But in order to get the bonus, they're going to remove the British flag. So let's zoom on over there. Jeez. So the British flag in Austria will be removed. The shift does not mean, like, take it to your side. It just means shift it 1 space. So from occupied to neutral. And then the bonus on this event says, if there are no British flags in either Spain or Austria, score 2 victory points, which there are not. So the victory points go from 15 to 17, and this is just like Twilight Struggle, in that 15 is the middle, 0 is the British win, 30 is the French win. So the French have it slightly on their side now. So that takes up the event, and the event and the bonus have to happen before anything else. They're going to get 3 economic and 2 military, I believe. Yeah. And 2 military points. So those economic are going to be to flag 2 spaces in the fur markets. Because they can't reach the Gulf of St. Lawrence, actually. Which would be nice if they could. But they're going to give the Allegheny, which is 2, and then Oswego, which is 2. And that means that they have to increase their debt by 1 because they only had 3. So the French debt is now at 2. And that should restore parity in the fur markets. It does. And also gives them a route into the Champlain Valley. It'll be interesting now to see if the British decide to go for the military event to take either the Champlain Valley fort or the Ohio Forks fort. Because both of those are key. But there's only one more major economic action card or tile out there. So that's sort of the decisions you have to make. That's another thing about this game, is the decisions are just awesome. And it feels like every one is like very, very important. Sometimes in Twilight Struggle, you just have a card left over and you're like, I'll just toss 2 points into Costa Rica or something like that. In this game, I feel like everything can be optimized. And that's probably how it is in Twilight Struggle too. But in this one, I feel like you can, if you think really smartly, you can really do just about anything. And really improve your odds, if you think about it. So, over to the British now, the interesting decision between military and economic actions. I forgot to do the French. They also get 2 military action points, and they're going to use that to purchase a bonus war tile, which they are going to place in Spain. And I'm debating whether or not to show you any of this, to kind of make that like this surprise. Thinking about doing that. So maybe we'll do that for the first war and just make it a surprise, but then again, having you guys know what I'm thinking is also important, so we'll see. But I'm not going to tell you what that was. So the British are going to go with the best of both worlds here and take this 3 military, 2 economic action with a event on it, and they're going to play the War of Jenkins' Ear, which says reduce your debt by 2, and if you have mercantilism, you increase the French debt by 1. Well, they definitely have mercantilism, because I think the best British card that there is the East India Company, which which gets them some bonus victory points for some of the advantage tiles that they control. So they do have mercantilism, which allows them to, on the debt track, decrease their own by 2 and increase French by 1. So that'll help with what they're about to do, because they get 3 military and 2 economic. So now they could use the 3 military and just go straight into the Ohio Forks, which is just really is just as good as going into the Champlain Valley, because they can still get to Quebec, Montreal from there. They could also take Halifax or Louisbourg, because either of those are also available. I'm going to give you also a route into Acadia, but it doesn't block any fur markets where the primary battle is going on right now. So they're going to hop into the Champlain Valley. And, yeah, that's a tough one. Maybe not. They're going to go down to the Ohio Forks and make the French spend the debt if they want to. So that's their 3. They get 2 economic points, and they're going to use those to flag this fur market, which will cost them 1 debt. They're up to 2. And then they have, that's it actually. So the French are slightly behind in the fur markets and the overall, and they're definitely behind in the fish markets, and they're going to have a difficult time getting in there. But they're going to have to overcome that. They do have an advantage tile that they can use next turn, so we'll see how they make an advantage of that. But they haven't come into contact yet, having to switch each other's, which is where it gets a little more expensive and a little more difficult. They've just been filling up empty spaces. Also, the Hudson Bay is unavailable because it hasn't been conquered yet, but that offers another fur space in the north. So now the French with Action 3. The French are taking this 2 military, 2 diplomatic event and war tile upgrade space. So first of all, they have to do the event, which is South Sea Speculation, and it is a finance card, ministry card that has to be revealed. They reveal John Law. And so they're going to have South Sea Speculation. It says bonus -2 to construct a new squadron this action round. And the regular one is just unflag a market, which does not isolate another market. So what actually may not be a bad idea is we've really ground things out in the fur markets, and the fish is still up for grabs. I'm actually going to switch over to India. So let's slide on over to India, and I'm going to unflag this cotton market, because the French are at a disadvantage when it comes to cotton, because the British have it blocked off. So it's pretty easy for them to take that one. So by removing this, it at least makes it a little more difficult for them to get that easily. So they're going to hold on to this South Sea Speculation, because with the other 2 military points, they're going to build a squadron. So squadron costs 4 military points. This is -2. So they're going to get a squadron on the map because they start off at a disadvantage. Now it comes with 2 diplomatic points, and those diplomatic points actually, you know what, the French may want to deploy a fleet since they have that as a major action. It's very tempting. I think they're going to. And I think they're going to deploy a squadron to the Hooghly River, simply for the fact of getting these markets at some point, which would be nice. So anyways, that's going to cost them 1 debt. And then with the 2 diplomatic, they're going to flag this alliance space in Austria, which gives them a bonus in the Central European theater of the War of Spanish Succession. So the tilt in Europe is definitely pro-French. So the British are going to have to do something about that. There are two big forward diplomatic actions out there, so they're probably going to hop on that next and try and balance things out across Europe, because right now they're at quite the disadvantage. I forgot to do it earlier, but I did upgrade a war tile on the War of Spanish Succession board. So the British grabbed a 4 diplomatic, 2 economic investment tile. The 4 diplomatic is going to be used to grab an alliance space in the German states and Saxony, as well as in the Dutch Republic. That'll help boost them in the Central European theater, where there's a bit of victory points up for grabs, as well as some conquest points if they can get in at the right time with those. So the 2 economic are going to be used to grab this cotton market back, which is going to force them to do a debt, go up by 1 debt, which, puts them back into parity, but there's just not really enough economic points. There could be, but it just depends on who grabs that last major economic action. And I can almost guarantee it's going to be the French. Yep, so the French did go for it. It's 2 economic, 2 diplomatic, upgrade, and an event. And the event has to be economic, which this event is economic. So it's on the French side, it says, draw 1 bonus tile for each space you control in Ireland, adding them to the Jacobite Rebellion space. So they control 1 space in Ireland, so they're going to draw 1 bonus tile, which I'm still keeping secret, and they're going to add it to the Jacobite Rebellion. And those are only good. The regular war tiles aren't necessarily good. Some of them are bad. You can kind of weed those out. They're going to get an upgrade, which means that they can take one of the regular war tiles and replace one in those theaters. And the thing is, whenever you get rid of one, so I will show you which one I got rid of. I got rid of a bad one, a -1 in Central Europe. Whenever you get rid of them, you can actually permanently remove them from the game. So you're kind of like weeding. It's almost like deck building in a sense. You're kind of weeding out the bad ones, so you don't have to worry about them coming up again. So those spaces are actually really big. So now on to the economic and the diplomatic part of all of this. So they're not going to be able to get that the fish markets. They're going to lose out on the fish markets unless they dump into Georgia's bank here. The fur markets, they're going to go ahead and exhaust their advantage tile from the Iroquois. From the Algonquins. And they're going to put a conflict marker on a fur market, which there are some options here. It doesn't matter a whole lot, but they'll put it up there. And so that will now not count as a fur market. So currently the tally sits at 4-3. The French are ahead. So that's useful. So those last 2, they could swap the Georgia's Bank fishing market space. They could tie, or to go ahead technically of the British in cotton, which cotton is technically more valuable. They'll probably end up drawing over. The problem is they don't really have enough to flip this space. So they're just going to take West Bengal here and get the silk advantage tile, which they can't use. You cannot use it the same turn you get it. And the British will be a little bit upset about that because they're trying to get these advantage tiles for the East India Company, which they haven't really done a good job of. So that's the 2 for the economic. They could spend some more in debt to get another space, but they can't really reach anything else. And removing spaces is expensive, so they're not going to do that. They also have a two diplomatic side to that, and that one's a bit difficult. They could go for probably one last hop in Europe. Yeah, that's what they'll do. They're going to grab Savoy, get an alliance with Savoy, which will help them in Spain, or no, it'll help them in Central Europe. Sardinia helps them in Spain. So I think I'm going to leave it in Central Europe because that's going to be a big fight. And that will be all for the French. Now, I just want to look over this quickly. They didn't do all they wanted to do. They may or may not win the furs. They're not really well set up for the wars is the problem because, there's not a war in India. So having that fleet there isn't exactly all that useful. They didn't get to deploy their other fleet, which is unfortunate. Or squadron, I should say. Didn't get what they wanted to get done in the fish markets. Cotton, only slightly. But the conquest points, they wanted to get a fort so that they could possibly take something in this war. But it doesn't look like they're going to have the opportunity to do that because they didn't get any fort spaces. So, that's unfortunate, but you're forcing the British into doing some stuff as well, which have kept them. So it's over to the British now to pick between two of the last two of the last investment tiles. So they grab the 4 diplomatic, 2 military. They're going to spend 3 to get an alliance in Spain. And then they're going to use the other, they have 1 left over, they're going to use to get an alliance with Sweden, which is a prestige space, which they have to use a debt to complete. And they're going to have 2 military points. And they're going to capitalize on the hopes that they're going to win the war in North America by grabbing a fort. And they're going to grab Louisburg, because it's going to cost them 3, which is going to make them go up by another debt, up to 5. So now they're pretty well positioned, actually. They could really sweep the French out of North America if things go well for them there, which is not guaranteed because Queen Anne's War does not have anything extra in it, but they're going to win, I'm pretty sure, because they have the conflict markers. They have the forts, 2 forts and a squadron, so pretty likely that it's not going to end well for the French in North America. So we're going to be done with this. We're going to go on to the scoring, and then we might include the war in this video too. Alright, so scoring starting off in all the regions. North America first. So we're going to count up all of the markers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for the French. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So actually the British will get the victory points because they do have 2 more than the French. So they'll get 2 victory points for North America, bringing the total back down to 15. Now over to Europe. The French have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. British have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the French win here. They will get 1 victory point. It's back up to 16. We'll do the prestige spaces. So one's marked in green. The French have 2. The British have 2. So it cancels out and nobody gets it. Now on to the Caribbean, which should still be a tie because no one really messed with anything down here. I think they start off balanced. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the British. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the French. So no. Victory point's going to go back down to 15, and the British are going to get a treaty point. And now for India. French 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the British have So that's a victory point and a treaty point for the French, bringing the victory points to 16. Now we'll go on to the global markets. We're going to stay in India for the cotton. So 1 cotton space for the British, 2 cotton spaces for the French. The French win that market and will get 2 victory points and a treaty point, taking it up to 18. And 2 treaty points. Now to the fish markets. Fish markets are won by the British. They have 2. The French have 1. So they will get 2 victory points, bringing them back down to 16, but they also gain a debt, which takes them up to their debt limit, British. And now for the furs. So the furs for the French are 1, 2, 3, 4, and the British are 3. So the French take the furs as well. They're going to get 2 victory points and a treaty point up to 3. So all in all, between the global demands and the regional scoring, the French slightly get an advantage, only very slightly, because they were, I think, at 17 victory points before, and now they're at 18. So they do just barely manage to increase their total. Let me make sure there's nothing else to do in this turn. Yep. No victory check, and so now we're going to go on to the war. And I'll include the war in this just to make it interesting so you can see everything. Alright, so we're going to do the War of Spanish Succession, starting off with Central Europe. So let's go ahead and flip. Let's see what we got. So it's zeros for both sides, but there's a little bit of a different marker. So the French, 1 means they take a debt, which means that the British are going to go up a debt, but they can't take any more debt, so that means it's going to be a victory point for the French up to 19. The debt is very dangerous. It's like free money, and then at some point it's going to really hurt you. So getting up to that debt limit is not very fun. So now we will do the French or the British one. So if in Central Europe there was a fleet or a fort, they could damage it or remove the fleet back to the Navy box. There is not, so that doesn't do anything. So now we're going to calculate up the strength, and I'm going to see if I can't find 2 dice to keep track of this, because there's a couple of numbers you have to remember. I grabbed the dice set on my Twilight Struggle set so we could match the colors here. So you actually don't use any dice, I'm just using them to keep track of stuff. Okay, so the French total strength is 0. Austria, they get a point. Bavaria, they get another point. Denmark, Norway, no. The Dutch Republic, no. The German states, no. Savoy, they do get another, which brings their total strength up to 3. Bonus strength is listed here. You reference that on which ones you control on the map, and it tells you which map you're on. So the French or the British have no strength. Austria, they get nothing. Bavaria, they get nothing. Denmark, Norway, nothing. The Dutch Republic's 1. The German states 2. And they get nothing for Savoy. So the French will win it. They win it by a margin of 1. So they're going to get 2 victory points, and that'll bring the total up to 21. The loser gets a treaty point. So now they're, in pretty high territory. It's not bad. Let's go over to Spain, where the British or the French have a bonus war tile. And so it's not a great one. But I think they upgraded the one. I think it was a -1 originally. But that's 2 debt that the British have to take. And the French were watching that thinking, get up to that debt limit so we can really pound you with this 3 debt. So it's going to push them up to 23 victory points now. So not looking good for the British. But their total strength starting off as a +2. That's a really good bonus, or a really good basic war tile. And the French will start off at 1. So now we're going to get governance. The French do not have governance. Sardinia, nobody has that. Spain, they do have 1. That'll push it up to 2. And they have no squadrons. The French, or the British, will get governance +1. No Sardinia. They do get a Spain. They do not have a squadron. So they win with a 2 margin of victory. So they're going to get a victory point, which is down to 22. Which technically the French still come out ahead of this because they got the 2 victory points from the debt. The loser's going to get 2 treaty points, which puts them up to 5. And they'll get a conquest point as well, the British, which can be used in Gibraltar, St. Augustine, Ascenso, I believe, and Minorca. So Minorca is a prestige base in Europe. Gibraltar gets you a nice tile. St. Augustine is good for the Caribbean. And Ascenso gets you another nice war tile. So that's a tough one. I think they're going to go for St. Augustine, though, because that helps them with a conquest line in the Caribbean down to the Saint Dominique, and it also gets them the fruit tile, which is helpful for their East India Company ministry card. So they're going to take that from the Spanish. The spoils of war in the Spanish theater. So now on down to Queen Anne's War, which is where we're a little bit worried as the French. They have +1. The British have a +1 as well. It's probably not going to go well for the French. And the worry is that they could get blasted off the map. So conflict markers, they do have one of those. They have no forts and no squadrons, so that's their total strength. The British are going to get 1 for the Ohio Forks Fort, 1 for the Louisburg Fort, and 1 for the squadron that they have, which is with the 4. So it's a 2 margin of victory, which is just enough to keep them out of the conquest point space. It's just going to be a straight up 1 victory point down to 21. So 1 more, they would have got a conquest point. But they just managed to keep it in that +1 area, which is hugely important for the French. They really just dodged a bullet there. And now over to the Jacobite Rebellion, which are interesting wars that can really give some good bonuses to the French if they win them. So they have a +2, and the British also have a +2, interestingly enough. 2 and 2 to start off with. And this is the same one. They could remove a fleet or a fort if they wanted to, and they don't want to. They can't, so. So it's 2 and 2. They're going to get a style, if they have a style on a ministry card, which they do, up to 3. The Dutch Republic, no. Ireland, they do have, which goes up to 4. Scotland, no. And conflict markers, no. So 4 is their final strength. So the Dutch Republic, they do have 1 in. Ireland, no. Scotland, no. And the conflict markers, no. So the French will win by a margin of 1, which they will get a victory point for. They do not get the special bonus down there, because they did not win by 3 or more. Which is unfortunate, because that Jacobite victory marker is good, but not excellent. So that ends the War of Spanish Succession. Overall, a resounding victory for the French. They were at 18 victory points to start off with. They're now at 22, thanks to some of that debt that they got. 3 victory points from debt, which if you take those away, they only gained 1 victory point total. No conquest points, really. The British managed to pick up something in the Caribbean theater, but all in all, not a bad first turn, especially for the French. They're looking at this and thinking that they're pretty well set up. They thought they were really going to get blitzed in the wars, honestly. Especially got worried about North America. But since they did not, they're looking at this turn as very, very successful. So on to turn 2, and there's going to be 2 peace turns before we have the next war, which is the War of Austrian Succession. So that allows you to build up a little bit more. The only war that has 2 peace turns preceding it. So that'll do it for this episode. We'll be back with the Austrian Succession and the 2 peace turns in episode number 2. And the victory points are now at 23 because of the Court of the Sun King. I forgot to give the French an extra +1 bonus for that. So 23, the ending victory points.